You are going to love this one. My guest today spent 30 years in education technology, has a background in physics and engineering, and at some point her soul just said, there is so much more for you. And she listened. Michele Marie Neyers is a two-time best-selling author, founder of Juicy Conscious Living, and the woman behind the Her Frequency Method, a framework that weaves together human design, the gene keys, the actual science of energy, and feminine spirituality to help soul-led women in midlife step fully into who they were always meant to be. She's not talking about mindset shifts, and she is talking about frequency. She's talking about becoming her at the cellular level. And if any part of you has been quietly wondering, is this really all that is? This episode is your answer, and it all starts now. Welcome to the Soul Inspiring Business Podcast, the space where ambition, alignment, and a whole lot of soul come together to elevate the way you show up in the world. This is your space to activate what already lives within you, think bigger, and lead from your most expansive self. Because you're not just here to do the work, you're here to make a difference. Let's lift into what's next and love being on purpose. Welcome back to the Soul Inspiring Business Podcast. And I am so happy to introduce you to our guest today, Michele Marie Neyers. So Michele, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Kara. I'm so happy to be here and having this conversation with you. Thanks for having me.
Yes. Well, and we were just talking pre-show. We actually had recorded a show back in December, and both Michele and I believe so much in divine timing and divine alignment. And for some reason, it just kind of felt a little bit off. So we are recording again today. And I really am excited to introduce you to Michele because we connected with each other through a women entrepreneurial group. And the work that Michelle's doing is really about, creating your more conscious vision, like tuning in to the vision that lives within you, and then figuring out how do we actually create that in the outside world in a very simplistic definition, I suppose.
That was really good. Yeah.
So it's really, how do you become her? How do you become the person that you were really born to be? And I know we were touching briefly on this idea of human design, and I'm going to ask Michele, all kinds of questions about that I can maybe open your world up to this idea of the different techniques and in human design and things that inform Michelle's work. But before we do that, Michele, would you just give our audience a little bit of a background of you and, how your own calling and your own kind of becoming her that has led you to this point where you want to help others find this more conscious definition of themselves in the world.
I know, in a nutshell, right?
Yeah, in a nutshell.
Yes, with the caveat that, the work is still ongoing, right? I truly believe that. I didn't always know that we are, in my eyes anyways, forever becoming. We're always becoming someone. And it was really, I can go back many years, actually back to 2009. I won't tell the full story, but my journey really started there, I feel, 2008, 2009, where I started to really do some different personal development work where I really, hadn't been introduced to it completely, where I was, really immersed in it, like turning the mirror back on yourself, if you will, to really look at, hey, like I had the sense, within me that something was wrong, something, we always hear people talk about there's something more, right? And I just knew that the trajectory that my life was on at that point, I was about 39 years old at the time, was, I just knew that couldn't just be it. Like, this can't be all there is to this beautiful life, right? And
Yeah.
I was I'm a spiritual woman. I always have been. And I really had lost touch, I think, with that. And so I started turning myself back towards, really looking at myself honestly. And that's really where the journey started. And I started to fall in love with some of these ideas, some of these concepts that now make up the body of work that I'm creating. And it's really, the first one really started with understanding this perspective that I get to be the author of my life.
Mm.
Like, life isn't just happening to me, which was my perspective up until that point.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, yeah, things really shifted starting then. And it's, like I said, still building and deepening and evolving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting you say that too. I was just in conversation with somebody the other day, and we were talking about this idea of, the circular path, that sort of the patterns that we get to experience. And so
Mhm.
just when we think we've gone through a particular pattern, and let's call it, just to call it out, like maybe a relationship pattern, right? And so
Right.
you think that, okay, yeah, I feel like good about that. I've healed that version of myself. And then you get another opportunity that comes through to kind of test that. And then you get a deeper understanding of the same lesson. So you're not, but it's like another layer of it. And so I think
Yes.
that's a little bit of what, when you were speaking, it kind of reminded me of that, in that, we our continued evolution, right? Because we learn, our lessons come often when we're, uncover in times of when things aren't as good, than when
Right.
they're really good, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and I think the other thing that I think is so true, and we talk a lot about on the show, which is why I was really excited to talk to you today too, is this idea of consciously choosing, because everything is a choice in our lives. And so the more that you get that, the more that you get to understand, like, it's not predetermined. Like, you get to take a stand in your own life and say, no more of this, or I want more of that. Or, like, if you think about it like a beautiful buffet, then which
Right.
things do I want to layer in? And maybe you have some things you want to put back, and things
Right.
that you're going to say, no more of that. And so that,
Exactly.
there
Yeah.
begins I think, to your point, for anybody listening that feels like, wow, mm, what is this life? Like, what have I been choosing? Or can I choose differently? Like, may this be the start that kind of wakes something up within you to say, hey, there's another way. It doesn't, that, you can start more leaning into conscious choice of what you want to accept in your life. And you spoke about some of the tools. One of the things I've always been fascinated by is human design, which is, I know, one of the, won't spend the whole episode talking about this, but it's an interesting tidbit. And I'd love to help you, for anybody of our listeners that don't know human design, it is a kind of an interesting analysis that gives, again, a deeper understanding of how you show up in the world, of how things respond to you in the world, and knowledge of it, I think, helps inform how you show up for others. So can you speak to a little bit about, like, what is human design? I know it's part of some of the work that you do, not the whole thing, but what if somebody asks you about human design, what would you say? What's the definition of human design? And then can you take us through the different pieces, and maybe people can start to identify themselves as one or the other?
Oh yeah. There's a lot to it, as you know. But if you've never heard of human design, and I actually use the human design system, but I also bring in sort of a sister system called the Gene Keys,
Mhm.
um, because of the way it's modeled around frequencies, and that's a big part of my work. But they're very much related. But it is a system that, to me, gives you a map of your potential. Like it shows you all of the things that might be natural for you, or might be what we call superpowers, or like a strength that you have, or it might be something that you're here to learn, like a life lesson or something that you are here to gain wisdom around, a lot of the time, so that you can be of service to others with that. It might be through, your experiences, or through sharing, your knowledge, or um, all different aspects of that. But what I love about it the most, what really drew me to it, because I have a science background, and so I love the science, but I love bringing in the what people call the woo, right? Like the sort of the unseen stuff that we don't fully understand, but I love that stuff. Um, the part that really intrigued me was that it wasn't like any other personality assessment out there. It's really not that. Because if you think about it, when you take an assessment like that, who's answering those questions? It's really your conditioned mind. So what you're getting is, a map of, what your conditioned mind really thinks.
Yeah.
And I've talked to people who do those assessments, and they say, yeah, the accuracy, not so much. But with human design, you give it your birth data, and it's really calculating that stuff based on that. You're not answering 100 questions, or really bringing that conditioned, and we're all conditioned in some way, shape, or form. So it's not bringing that into the picture. So to me, it's a more complete picture. And I'm always careful not to say that your human design is who you are, because it's not. It really is showing you the potential, like who you could become, which
Mm.
is which is why I use it as a tool, because there's so much to, that you can see inside of that map, if you decide that you want to go explore
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
Like I always tell people too, my suggestion is always not to, have someone do a reading for you. There's plenty of people that will tell you what's in your human design, and to me it's not super helpful. To me, it's much better to understand just a little bit, and to
Mhm.
have, um if you want to go, into it, that's really where the magic is. We were talking pre-show about this, that, a lot of people go surface level, and, they might know their type or their profile, or, something about, their design. Um, but that's it. And there's so much more. It's
Yeah.
kind of, yeah. Yeah.
And I
So much
think just
more
to
to
give
explore.
people context and zoom out a little bit, so what we're
Yeah.
talking about is in this human design, because there are four designs. And
Yeah.
so kind of again knowing just generally, and you input your birthday, your place of birth, and
Yeah.
anything else?
Your date and
Time of
time of birth, and then your location. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. So it's
Yeah.
basically calculating from, I guess, an energetic standpoint, like where were you in the solar system and in the world when you were
Yeah.
created and born. And then
Yeah.
it has these different, designs basically that
Yeah. It's really
come through.
fascinating that, you give it your birth data, and a lot of people think that that's, what everything in your design is based on. It's really interesting that your personality side of your design gets imprinted at your time of birth, but it's about 88 days before that, when you're still in the womb,
Hmm.
that the body side of your design is imprinted. So it's during the third trimester that
Interesting.
things are also happening. But your birth date and time, gives a pretty accurate idea of when when that was happening.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's fascinating, right? Like there's certain things happening, um, and we don't often think about that. But
Mhm.
yeah, when you
And
go
what are the
deeper,
4 main types again?
yeah,
There's the can you just a quick
yeah.
overview? We don't have to spend a lot of
Yeah,
time on
yeah,
it, but I'm
yeah.
curious.
Yeah, no, I love that. You know, a lot of people, because a lot of people, if they've heard about human design, they've maybe heard about the different types, and they're energetic types, like you said. And the first type is called the generator. There's two flavors of the generator. There's the just the plain generator, and then, or what I like to call the builder, and then the manifesting generator. So they have similar energies or auras, but they're, you know, they're slightly different in the way they operate in the world.
Mhm.
And then you also have the projector and the reflector.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think so so I
Oh,
thought it was 4.
and I'm sorry, and the manifester.
Okay. And the
I,
manifestor, yeah.
yeah, I was like, wait a
So,
second. Yeah,
yeah.
there's yeah,
Um, and I think what's interesting and, this is not necessarily all on, human design, but I think what was interesting for me understanding it
yeah,
was, the generators that I think the majority of the population are generators. Is that right? They're builders, but
yeah.
yeah.
But
And then how many?
70% about.
70%. Okay. And then projectors are how many percentage? What's the percentage?
Oh gosh, you're going to put me on the spot. Projectors, I think 20%,
Okay. All
I
right. Yeah.
believe.
And then the smaller
Oh
percentage would
gosh.
be the reflectors and the manifestors.
Yeah.
But I actually found out when I did it that I'm a projector. I'm a manifesting projector, I believe.
Okay.
Um, and so what was interesting about that is that it's one of the things just to kind of understand is how they work in the world. And so I actually need a lot of downtime. I'm actually in the world quite a bit and people see me out and about a lot, but
Yes.
I really work better by not being so activated all the time. I really do need time and space to create and downtime. And I used to kind of get upset with myself by it and think like, gosh, why can't you just, go out, come on, you should be doing more or whatever, right? And so kind of understanding that was helpful. It was also interesting to understand that a lot of times the projector needs to be invited into things.
Mhm.
So versus actually um, making something happen,
In
like pushing something, which is
yeah,
more generator.
yeah,
So what's interesting about it and as you mentioned, it does more give you a guide for potential, but it also can give you I found some it's just information as you go
right.
through this journey of uncovering how do I tune in to my own vision, my own design, so that things can then start to show up with more ease. And when you can like lean into some of these things, um, like life doesn't have to be so hard.
Yeah, like even just and you've probably experienced this, and I know I did too, and it's what caused me to want to go deeper is, you know, just even I don't want to give your listeners the wrong impression that they can't just look at, you know, some basic things about their human design because, you know, even just doing that, like you just described, when I learned that I was a generator, I mean, just learning that and understanding sort of the qualities of that aura um, made so much sense. And you can also discover, you know, what there are themes for those different types that we won't get into today, but it can, if you know yours, and maybe we can even drop them.
Mhm.
If you know yours, you can kind of be on the lookout for them. Like for the generator, I know that my signal that I'm not operating in alignment with my design is frustration. So if I'm continuously frustrated about something, that is a signal telling me that there's something off in the way I'm operating. Because, you know, a generator, when they're operating, you know, by their design, they're really satisfied and fulfilled by doing work that they love and loving the work that they do. And
Mhm.
so when frustration shows up, it's a it's like a bat signal.
It's a clue. Yeah.
It's a clue.
Things
It's
are off.
a clue. So I say all that to say that, even understanding your type and your profile and some basic things about your human design can be life shifting.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It
So,
was for me. It truly
yeah.
was actually understanding, and there were some other things with it as well,
Yeah.
but again, just understanding, oh, I need to be invited into things. Things work and flow with more ease when I'm
Mhm.
invited versus trying to push out, which is a little easier said than done because like you think about it, I mean, if I want to do more speaking opportunities, then
Right.
what does that mean? Like, then I can't push out things. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I know,
So
that's where the understanding comes, right? When you
mhm,
spend some more time with it, because it can be very difficult to kind of go, "Okay, well, what do I do with that?" Right?
yeah,
Now that I
exactly. Now
It's
that I
like,
know this, how
what
do
does
I
that
work with
mean,
it?
you know? Yeah, because I had the same experience. Because mine is that, with the generators, we're meant to, in the traditional language, it's wait to respond, and I'm like, "Well, what does that mean? Like, am I supposed to sit here?" Like, But what I came to understand is that, no, because of my energetic type as a generator, there are things coming at me all the time. And so it's my job to respond to the things that are in alignment with what I want and to not respond to the things that aren't. So it's just even understanding your energetic sort of design
Mhm.
can tell you that. And you as a projector, yeah, like waiting to be invited doesn't mean that you just sit around, right? What it
Yeah,
does mean, though, is that you're putting yourself out there so that people know who you are
yeah,
and they know what you're about so that you can be invited. So it's
yes,
not, that you just sit around, which a lot of people, yeah, do misunderstand some of it because some of the language is a little esoteric, but yeah,
right. Yeah,
yeah,
but that's exactly right. It's like, "Oh, I need to be," and actually that's probably why even in my own business,
yeah,
I, uh, work so much better by referral because it's, and again, it's not like I'm just like sitting here idly. I follow up and I call people all the time, but it's the actual engine is really people that reaching out to me, not me like cold calling people or doing other, that's
right.
not the energy of how I've do my best work, right?
Yeah,
So just kind of having an understanding of that, I think has been really interesting.
yeah.
And, as it relates back to if somebody's listening right now too and saying, kind of coming back to our original, what we were talking about at the very beginning, like there's a piece of me that's unfulfilled right now, or I don't really know what my direction is supposed to look like. And I don't even know what it means to have vision. Like I don't even if somebody was to ask me, what do I want? I don't even know what to say. So how would you help somebody think through the initial steps of that? Like if they're in that place you were back in 0809,
Mhm.
unsure of what's next, like what do they do?
Yeah.
A loaded question.
Yeah, it's a big question, right? Like how many people do you know, and I'm talking to the listeners too, that you know, they've heard people talking in their life about, discovering their purpose or,
Mhm,
what am I here for? And it's one of those big questions we get to answer as human beings, right?
mhm,
Or spiritual beings having this human experience that we're having. Um, I think the first thing I would say is that it is an inner job, and that if you haven't done some sort of work around sort of understanding your inner world and the inner voices that are you know, with us all the time. Those can hold some clues around, I truly believe that we know what we want, but we don't often give ourselves permission to want that because we don't think it's possible. But a lot of the times with my clients who get stuck in that place that you're talking about, um, even just me giving them permission to dream again. Like, what if you were to just say what's possible, right? What would you write down? Like, assuming that money and time and resources are no object whatsoever, because really they're not, they're circumstances. What would you write down? I love, there's this exercise out there that I actually learned from Steve Harvey. Do you know Steve Harvey? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, of course.
He's
The
like
comedian, Family Feud, our family
yes,
loves Family
Family
Feud.
Feud host. He's a motivational speaker. But he has this exercise. You can find this on YouTube. It's really fun. And I've had my clients do it. It's called the 300 Desires
Mm.
exercise. And essentially you sit and write down, you know, 300 things that you would truly want. You can get as ridiculous as you want. And he challenges you because, a lot of people can get maybe up to 50 or 60 or even 80. I think the first time I did it, I got to like 75 or something. But it's something you just have to keep coming back to, like as you think of things, because it's not always easy to crack yourself open to that, especially if you've become, closed off by life's experiences and circumstances and things like that that you're not dreaming anymore, that you're not allowing yourself to really use your imagination in that way.
Mhm.
So that's usually the first place I'll go with
It's
people.
funny you say that because I did that at the start of the year. I
Yeah.
did, one and it was just 100 desires, but it was, I was just thinking as you started telling that it's same thing. It's like most people could get to, like, 30 to 50, like,
Mhm.
somewhat easily not even easily, even 50 can be tough, can be
50
a little
stuff.
challenging,
Mhm.
right? But it's like then you're, like, stuck. Like, I remember when I did it, I was like, "Huh, what else do I want?" And, I really then I had to leave it and just what you're talking about, come
Yep.
back to it, like, when something pops into your head and you have this running list, but I think there's also a lot of power to your point as well as writing it down.
Yeah.
And truly, I mean, it could just be any little journal, any piece of paper. Doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be literally a pen and a paper
Yeah.
and number 1 to 100,
Yeah. You'd be surprised at what you're
and let
point.
alone 300. I can't even imagine that.
I know, right? I think that's why, you know, the exercise was for 300 because it really challenges you to
Mhm.
keep coming back.
Yes.
I mean, it took me a long time to get to 300, honestly.
Yeah. Well, and also
Um,
sometimes I think what happens in doing it, when you start doing it and then you're like, "Actually, I don't know if I really do want that."
right.
Like, it'll actually evolve,
It
as we
does.
were even talking about in the beginning, we're just living and evolving humans all the time. And
Yeah.
so, they change over time or even after like a week or 2, you may come back and say, "Huh, actually, I wanna refine that," you know?
Yeah.
And in that refinement is the exciting piece of, creating more consciously, creating what you want in your life.
Yeah. And I know, a lot of the times what I've seen, and this was my experience too, maybe it was yours as well, that, we have a tendency, it's like really easy to write things down that maybe are like material things or vacations or, those types of things. So once you get beyond that, you know, it really causes you to think differently, I think. causes you to think about, like, what kind of experiences do I want to have? What kind of relationships do I want to have? What's the quality of the relationship that I have with my partner or my sister, or, you name it, right?
Yeah.
Whatever your life looks like. And to your point, yeah, then you can come back and revisit it, maybe 6 months from now, a year from now, check off the things that actually, you did get,
Mhm.
because a lot of the times you can just put this list away and come back to it and go, oh, you know, so there is power to writing it down. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. And I love what you said too on not just focusing on the physical desires that you may have, but the quality of the experiences that you want to have, the depth of the friendships that you want to create, the depth of the meaning of work that you're building, whatever those things are. I love the idea of having a certain quality to go along with it.
Right.
Um, and and again, because sometimes you may not even know how that's going to unfold, but you just calling it out into existence is part of the process. And there's oh my gosh, what is his name? Big, he was like, ugh, you're gonna, okay, I'm forgetting his name. The observer effect. Do you know what
Okay.
I'm talking about?
I'm
Quantum physics guy,
Yes.
huge, Dr. Joe Dispenza. Hello.
Thank you.
Um,
Yep.
yeah. Um,
Dr.
so
Joe.
Dr. Joe. Uh, so there's this idea of the observer effect in that he studied and I will probably mess this all up, so please add any
Yeah.
context if you'd like. And for anybody listening, just try to get the gist of what I'm saying. But the idea is that molecules, if you observe something, like more molecules come towards it or start building and start creating. So it's the idea of like observing in the world, having awareness. So his point was in quantum physics, there is power in just the observation effect of having the awareness of saying, this is what I want to create, because then circumstances energetically, it's actually quantum physics, will start to move into the creation of that thing that you're observing. So the very act of awareness, of just creating the list, has a profound effect in that it is the awareness, the observation
Yeah.
of what it is that you want to create. And of course, in order to bring things in closer and, you have more attention or energy, flows where it's directed, where where your attention goes. But it starts with the awareness.
Yeah. And that what you just said too is a big part of that effect. Is we don't often think that we're that powerful, but where your energy and attention goes, like you said, um, unseen forces start to organize around what you're paying attention to. And because we can't see them, we don't always give them much credit.
Yeah. Or we dismiss it.
Yeah, exactly, which is why I started to fall in love with this idea of conscious becoming, because and in this intentional becoming, because I felt like the first 39 years of my life I was becoming something, but I hadn't intentionally created it. It was created definitely based on my choices. I'm not going to say that it wasn't partially conscious, but it wasn't necessarily intentional.
Yeah.
And it's amazing what happens when you give your intentional attention to something,
Mhm.
um, versus if you're just, like you said, there's no awareness whatsoever.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and the unconscious programming. I was just watching something the other day, and
Yeah.
it was about these babies that they had in a room, and they had snakes all around them. And the
Yeah.
babies were just like petting the snakes and like kissing them, and it was like grossing everybody out that was observing it. But their point was in the programming that occurs, right? So from a
Yeah.
very young age, and these were like 6-month-old little babies, so they hadn't been programmed to believe to have an innate fear of snakes. Uh, and so taking that and extrapolating that to all the other things that were programmed from or patterning that our parents inherited that then we inherit, you know, when you're not conscious of it, will just unconsciously rule your life. So the
So
peeling back
true.
of the layer of that is in a lot of the work that you're doing. Um, and
Yeah.
so
That's a
after, I guess, like, if, kind of taking it from, so somebody, you know, is feeling a little stuck, start with the desire list. And then, how are you currently helping some of your clients with this unfolding to help them come to a more consciously creating more of what they want?
yes. Well, what you know, I came to over this however many years, you know, I started when I was 39. I'm 57 today. So, like, however many years that is. Um, I feel like it's been building, and the program that I've created that I have some women going through right now, it's a small group, so they get to be really intimate with each other in terms of sharing, and it's a really safe space to explore this whole idea of becoming her, and what does that look like. There's a lot to it. Like we were talking about before, we use human design as a lens to help us.
Mhm,
But I also have studied, you know, with people like Bob Proctor and, mindset um, mentors in my past and during my, you know, during my years, just kind of putting this together. And we, inside of this program, it's very experiential. It's not like taking a course. It's more like, how can I understand more about myself
mhm,
so that I can release the things that maybe are conditioned that really aren't who I truly am, but I just, like you were saying, inherited them, or they've become a pattern or habitual way of being that's just not serving me.
mhm,
Um, how can I reclaim, those parts of me that maybe I lost somewhere along the way? A lot of the times, we grow up and things get lost because we think we have to leave them behind, or um, for whatever, there's a myriad of reasons. But, there's this sort of subtracting and adding back, or recognizing what truly is us. And then the big part of it really is what I call rehearse, because you can understand something with your conscious awareness, but then to start really stepping into um, a new, I don't want to say a new version of yourself, but like to step into that version of you that you truly want to be, who has the life, you know, has the desires manifesting in her life. There's a sort of some fun stuff we do around rehearsal, like
mm,
stepping into, you know, who is she? Like, that's the question we ask a lot, is like, what would she do? Or how would she handle this situation? Right.
mm.
Um, so yeah, I don't know. Did I answer
Yeah. Well,
your
it's funny even
question?
what you're saying, because it's and this really, taking it to a different version of what you're saying, but it's interesting with teams. So I run a real estate team. And
Yes.
so we do some role play and like going through certain situations, right? And what I always tell our team is I'm like, you have a script because they're like, oh, what script should I use? What words? You have a script just by what you say naturally. Like that is your script. So, what are you saying? How are you communicating it? How are people perceiving that? And to your point,
Mm.
you know, people have an unconscious script, an unconscious way of reacting in the world. And if you were the highest evolution of yourself at the highest level of who you were born to be, how would that person respond to the situations you're dealing with? And
Yeah.
I love that way, of you communicating that is to say, listen, as this highest level of you in the world, how would you handle it from that space?
Right. And it's, we start there. It's funny, we're talking about evolution, right? Like we start there because I think that's very relatable. We can relate to maybe a future version of ourselves. We might have some sort of idea of what that looks like, and we start to paint the picture clearer in the program that I run, so that it becomes more real.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, the part that makes it real is when we step into a relationship with her, because if we keep her separate from us, we'll never come together, if that makes sense. Like, you have to bring the two together
Mm-hmm.
energetically, I think.
Yep.
And that's a hard thing. It's like, well, how do I do, how do I do that
That's why
practically?
they have you
Like,
to facilitate.
it's like,
Yeah.
oh, I've done this many, many times. It's yeah, it's actually fun, fun work to do. But to me, that relational bond is key, because when you have that sort of, you're building and you're in real estate, how important building and nurturing relationships with people are. Um, Building and nurturing a relationship with her works the same way.
Yeah.
You know,
Or for
you
any men that happen to be listening with
Yeah, or
him
men,
too,
yes.
right? But your work specifically focuses with women.
Mine
But
does, but it's
yeah,
it's not
the same
gender
thing.
specific, right? Like,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah. And it's that I've had so many conversations actually just over the past month. So this is it is truly divinely timed.
divine time.
Yes. As in that I getting to self-fulfillment. And I think that's what really in the end a lot of this
Yeah.
is really intended to, as you talk about the evolution of her and the becoming of her, or for our men becoming of him,
Him. Mhm.
the highest expression of who you're meant to be in the world. That's it, when you're operating from that place, also the relationship, the job, the circumstances of your life also become a bonus versus the thing that gives you, like your real purpose is actually in becoming that person,
Yeah.
right? Versus
Yeah.
like having a particular job or a particular relationship. But then those things, as you become the most grounded and also most connected possible
Mhm.
expression of who you are called to be in the world, then all the other pieces then flow more with more ease.
So true.
So
Yes, and
it's
so
that,
very well said. Very,
right?
very elegantly said. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do believe that that's how it works, because when we're in that, connected alignment, um, we're we're also no longer fighting or resisting or struggling or forcing things to happen.
Mhm.
I do believe, and I say this without hesitation, that I feel like life gets easier. It just, it just does.
Mhm.
I think back on, I was in a corporate career for 25 plus years, and there were a lot of great moments and great relationships, things that I absolutely loved doing. But I would come home at night and be completely like, feel like my soul had drained to empty
Mhm,
and wasn't feeling that sense of fulfillment, like I was doing what I was meant to do.
mhm,
And we were talking about human design, and that was one of the things that really started pointing me, almost like a compass, pointing me in the direction of where, you know your design isn't going to tell you what you should be doing for a job or a career, but it's going to point you to what, you know, um, the qualities like we were talking about. If you're meant to work with a boss or not, or if you're like, meant to be self-sufficient and things
mhm,
like that, start to clue you into, okay, well, that's why that wasn't working. Okay.
mhm. Yeah,
Let me go in this direction instead. And yeah, it's yeah, like we were talking, it,
yeah.
it really is that evolution.
And there's a
Where
more of a detached sense from outcomes as well. Like, you're less
Yeah.
attached to a particular thing happening because you're more trusting of how things are unfolding for you,
Yes.
because life happens
Yes.
for you, right? Not to
It
you.
does, not to you.
Um, another thing I was just curious, and I'll close with this question because I am
Yeah.
curious how this shows up for you. You In the beginning, you were talking also about the guidance that's around us and,
Mhm.
like, tuning into your own intuition and learning to listen to the guidance that you're receiving. And I think sometimes when I've talked about this in the past with people, or, you know, everybody has a different version of how that shows up. I'm a big believer that intuition is a learned skill. Like, the more that you learn to tune into your own intuition, and the more you actually listen to the guidance you receive and either act on it or say thank you or whatever, the more that's given.
Mhm.
Um, but how would you describe how you can hear, how do you access your own intuition? Is there a practice that you've put in place? How does it show up for you daily? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, I know, I love this question. In in my program, I actually have what I call these anchors. It sounds terrible, but it's not something to weigh you down. It's actually something to help ground you, um, when you are feeling untethered, sort of like, oh, like I don't know what to listen to, right? We live in this wonderful, noisy modern world, right? Where there's all of this stuff that's vying for our attention. And um, one of the first anchors is all about um, slowing down and stillness and solitude. Basically, getting quiet, right? Because I don't believe that you can really effectively hear your intuition unless you have some sort of a practice, right? So I have I hesitate to call it a morning routine, but a time, a boundaried time in the morning where I'm just not available to the world.
Mm,
And it is my time for prayer and for meditation, for writing in my journal if I feel like it. But I'm not available to the outside world. And I
mm,
hold that time very sacredly, um, because I know that I've observed, we were talking about observing, I've observed that when I skip that, my day is just like, oh my gosh, chaos and like everything goes wrong, right?
yeah.
It just, um, but when I, sort of center myself and listen to what wants to come through that day, that's one way that I do it. But I've also been practicing, sort of just mindful awareness. So, when you're doing, one of my favorite times to do this is like when I'm washing the dishes or cleaning up after, making dinner or something like that, is just to really tune in then, because I feel like when I'm physically moving my body, um, my mind can sort of tune in better, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. Like the the frequency dial is tuned in at that point where I can just really, really, really listen. Um,
Mhm. And I
yeah.
love actually one of the things you just said was,
Mhm.
or earlier was a boundaried time in the
Right.
morning,
Yeah.
right? Because I think, morning routine, which
Yeah.
I operate the same way. It's like it's a boundary time.
Yeah.
My kids know about it. I need my time for meditation, and meditation sometimes is different depending on the day, what that
Yeah.
looks like. But to your point, it's a boundary time for you to be quiet with yourself and to spend in solitude because
Um,
the world will always demand more. They're always going to want, they're going to be
yeah.
pushing their agenda. So it's your boundary of creating your own. And again, to your point, like once you create that, then when you're out and about in your day, you can sort of get the feeling of that when something's trying to come in or when you get a nudge on something. So it makes then your awareness, the time spent in the morning also creates more awareness because you've got then a practiced understanding of what that inherently feels like or what guidance could look like, in that
Right.
quiet time.
Right. Yeah, it's so
And
true,
then you
right?
feel it later, throughout
More
the day.
you the more you practice it, the more it becomes, something that you want to turn to, where maybe you've got a pocket of time and that's all you've got, sometimes what I'll do is, let's say I'm, you know, in the car getting groceries or something like that. And, after getting groceries and putting them in the trunk, I will sit in my car for just a few moments and take a pause, right? Our tendency is we want to like get to get to the next thing and go to the next thing, and like we're constantly running
Yeah.
like a machine.
Yeah.
But taking those pauses, and sometimes in the beginning, I know I remember like putting little like reminders for myself, or you know anytime I would go to start the car, push the button, I would be reminded, it's like, oh, am I taking a pause here or what am I doing? And it comes
Mhm.
back to that intentionality, right? Of, okay, can I sit here for just a couple minutes? Of course I can, without looking at my phone, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And
So,
even I think, what I also believe is that when you have that time, even when then you're driving and it's not even conscious that, you're creating like a 2-minute span of conscious time,
yeah.
um, it's like because you know the feeling of what the nudge feels like when you're driving or when you're in the grocery store doing something and you get a nudge,
Mhm.
you know what it is because you felt it in that morning time. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I
So it's
do.
also that practice, but I love the idea of calling it a practice boundary because
Mhm.
it's very different for everybody. And,
So
you know,
different.
and
Yeah.
it shows up differently and works differently because we're all designed
We're
differently.
all designed differently. So, yeah, I'm sure, a lot of us have tried, someone else's morning routine, right? And
Yeah.
maybe it worked for a few days, or but it was never something we could sustain. It took me a long time to realize that. It's like, no, that doesn't work for me. I got to find what works for me. And
Yeah.
every day looks a little bit different, except that
Mhm.
boundary time is
It's
is
sacred.
is sacred. Yeah.
Yeah. Love that. Well, that's a great place to end. I'm
Yeah.
so excited for just this conversation that we finally made it happen. And for our listeners, thank you for tuning in and thank you for being part of this today. And I hope that you walked away with lots of golden nuggets from Michele. And if you'd like to learn more about Michele, can you share with our listeners where they can best find you? And if they wanted to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. I have really been, you know, hanging out, I'm going to say, on Substack. It is my favorite platform of choice. There are a lot of wonderful authors and thought leaders out there. So you can come visit me on my front porch that I've created there at michelemarieneyers.substack.com. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. I've created sort of this digital front porch for visitors to come, and I've even yeah, there's just a lot that's being created out there. Not just articles and content, but also a podcast is coming soon. So on Substack. So yeah,
Amazing.
so come see me on the front porch.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. We'll link it below so people can
Yeah.
learn more about you. We'll also link your website. And
Yes.
again, just for anybody that wants to learn more about Michele, but we hope that you have a beautiful week and that, this maybe you can take something from today's conversation into your week and figuring out how can you show up more consciously in more conscious creation of all that you desire as you further become and evolve into the highest expression of who you're meant to be in the world. So with that, have a great week. Thank you, Michele.
Thank you, Kara.
Thank you for spending part of your day with me. If this episode moved you, inspired you, or sparked something new, take 10 seconds to rate, review, or share it with someone who would love it too. It's one of the best ways to help this message reach more people who are ready for their next activation. You can connect with me on Instagram at Chaffin Donofrio, and don't forget to grab your free copy of the Next Level You Affirmation Guide at freegiftfromkara.com. It's a powerful tool to help you shift your energy, elevate your mindset, and step into the highest expression of who you're becoming. So until next time, let's lift into what's next and love being on purpose.